And now we'll turn it over to Ken to start off the training.
Well, thank you, Carmen. I'm very appreciative of that. Again, I want to take the opportunity to thank Alaska Community Foundation for inviting me to share some of the knowledge and wisdom that I've had and have acquired over the last 12 years in the area of fundraising, or what we call development. But the most important is you. And I want to make sure that you understand if you have any questions or concerns or things that you may have, have some angst about in working with major donors or reaching out to local organizations or direct mail, please feel free to put those, and we'll talk about that in the chat, the questions, and then we have time here to answer those questions. But let's get started. We're going to do fundraising best practices for Alaska Community Foundation affiliates. Okay. So we'll start off. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am. I'll give a little of my background real quickly. I always, whenever I present, I've been presenting for 11 years now, I always tell people how many slides they're going to be so they get an idea. And they can look at the lower right-hand corner and see how many slides are left. But, and also the time. And we're going to do 50 slides, about hour, 15 minutes. And if you have any questions, again, put them or comments, put them in the chat, and Carmen will take a look at those. And we have breaks in here, which we will ask. I'll ask, are there any questions? And most important thing, I always, people used to ask me, Ken, what do you do for a living? And I tell people, and I used to be a full-time fundraiser, a development professional for Beans Cafe, which is an organization, nonprofit in Alaska. Anyway, I would say to them, what I do is I thank people for a living. That's what I do. I get paid to thank people for a living. And what I want to do, and I say this almost every time I present, is I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your commitment to your sector. I want to thank you for your commitment to your community. I want to thank you for your time and the capacity that you have allowed in time and resources, sometimes financial, to support your local community, as an affiliate to ACF. So again, thank you. Thank you for that investment. Skip this. Okay, so this is just a quick overview. These next couple slides, we're going to talk about the plan and the calendar. We're going to talk about setting our goals and our budget. We're going to create a plan, create a calendar. Then we're going to talk about what we call organizational grants, or what we call really requests for funding. And what we're really looking at for our purposes are local companies and associations. We're not looking to the federal government. We're not looking to large foundations that are national. We're looking local, because those local companies and organizations will support you because you are their community and they want to support their community. So we're going to talk about who, when, what, how much. The local companies, the local associations that we use the word solicit. Sometimes I feel like it's a bad word, but really, we're just going to make an ask. That's all we're going to do. We're going to make an ask.
Love you. Love you.
And then the other ones we're going to talk about is donations from individuals, which is really our bread and butter. The donations from individuals that want to support you, just haven't been asked in the correct way, at the correct time, for the correct amount. And we're going to talk about how to do that. Then we're going to talk, and we'll use what we call appeal, affinity, acquisition. But let's not use those fancy words. We call them the triple A's, but we're not going to work with that. All we're going to talk about are people that are present donors that you have in your database and potential donors. And that keeps it real simple. And then we'll also talk a little bit on events. I know that's sometimes a portion of what we do, but we're going to talk about what are the pluses and minuses. What is the return on investment and value of events? But if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Then we're going to talk about when I teach, and I teach quite a bit, I always say there's two aspects of fundraising, and that is content and delivery. Content and delivery. The delivery is the platform, whether it's direct mail, whether it's digital, online, whether it's an in-person ask, and that's the delivery. But what is the content? And how do we create content that works? And it's been studied for 50, 60, 70 years, and we know what works in relationship to the content of our direct mail piece, our email piece, our online piece, and really our one that we do a direct ask of the individual. So we're going to talk about that, how we change from the organization as hero, the beneficiary as hero, to the donor as hero. But we'll go into those in the slides themselves. Okay, we'll talk a little bit on online and digital fundraising. We'll talk about some of the online basics. We're going to talk a little bit about the website. And we're going to talk somewhat about email. We're not going to spend a lot of time on Facebook and Twitter and social media, because that's such a small portion, especially as an affiliate that you'll be engaged with. But definitely the website is important, and definitely email is going to be important. We'll talk a little bit about marketing and promotion. I always tell people the reason that people don't donate to you is most of the time they don't either know you or they don't trust you. And trust is just a belief and a potential future action. That's all it is. That's what trust is. And because they don't have a connection with you, they do not have a track record with you in support of you, it doesn't engender trust. But we're going to talk about how do we get our message in front of individuals and organizations within our community, and we do that through the marketing and promotion. So we'll talk about PSAs. And a lot of times we use acronyms in our field and in many other fields, but all it means is a public service announcement. That's all it is. And we'll talk a little bit about the promotion of events, and we'll talk about some miscellaneous promotion. And then we'll come to the probably really the key in many, many ways for community foundations, and that's major donors. There are individuals within your community today that want to support you at the major donor level. And we need to define what a major donor is, but how do we approach those individuals? How do we identify those individuals within our community? And then how do we engage them for a potential donation in support of our mission? So we're going to talk about identification, wealth screening, the thank you meeting, and then the all important ask meeting. And then we'll wrap it all up with some questions. What are our next steps? This is something I really want to emphasize. And I'll say that at times. I really want to emphasize this, but I really want to emphasize, take 2 or 3 things out of this presentation. It's an hour and 15 minutes, but take 2 or 3 or 4 and say to yourself, I'm going to do those. That's good. I like that one. Let me do that one. Let me try that. But take those and then run with them. And then we have some information if you need some further information. And then, of course, my contact information. And I will give that information. It does not cost you anything. If you have any questions or concerns, if you want to run them first through ACF, great. But if you want to get a hold of me, feel free, and that contact information will be there. Okay? So when we start, now we're going to start. This is what we do. We call it a campaign, and we're going to have our 2021/2022, campaign for the ACF affiliates. And what we do with a campaign, and all campaigns are the same. We start with, what is our goal? You have a specific goal, which is really that Rasmussen match. And that's a specific goal because we want to get that match. So how do we raise, I believe it's approximately 30,000, those funds for that match? And if we've already reached that, let's go beyond. We reached our match, but how much more can we get for our community foundation? So we set our goals. Then we set up, what is our plan? What are we going to do? What is the plan? And then, real important, we set up our calendar and we allocate resources as individuals that are going to do that. So when do we do it? Who does it? Then we're going to implement the plan. We're going to follow the plan, but at times we need to adjust. We will need to adjust. I used to do this a lot in the digital realm because I would get results and I was, I need to adjust that. I need to give more funds or more capacity toward this specific. But we need to adjust as we go along if needed. A lot of it doesn't need to be adjusted. It goes, we used to do this thing, wash, rinse, and repeat. Wash, rinse, and repeat. And that's fundraising 101. And then at the end, we track results. And so important, as I've said to you before, thank you. We thank individuals that are supporting us for their support. Okay? So we're coming up on the most important time of the year to solicit donations, hands down. So these are the numbers. 60% of all donations for nonprofits come in the last, literally, 45 to 50 days. Starting November 15th to December 31st, 60% of the average nonprofits donations come in. Okay. It's called the holiday give season. So our timing is perfect for this. When I do direct mail, I've been doing direct mail for 12 years. I've done hundreds of thousands of pieces, and I've tracked the numbers. And I'll just run these numbers right for you. When you do a direct mail piece, other than November, December, your response level will be 1/2 of what you'll get in December. Literally, the number of individuals that will respond to a direct mail piece and the average donation will be double. When I was at Beans Cafe, we used to average approximately $75 per donation, other than November, December. Soon as November, December, we did November and December because we had Thanksgiving, we're a feeding facility, and December, our average donation went to $150. And the average, we would get around 4 to 5%. We would go up to 10% of individuals would return the remit or reply envelope for that direct mail piece. So it's so important that we do a holiday campaign. So in October, what you want to do is sit down with other individuals on your fundraising committee, other individuals within your organization who are helping and supporting the fundraising, and set the goal in the budget. Okay, we have a goal. We want to raise $35,000. We want to raise $50,000. That's our goal. Okay, now what is our plan to do that? And we set up, and I'll show you how we set the plan up. We create the plan and the calendar. One of the toughest things is missing dates, and there's things that are specifically have to happen at certain times to be successful. The best time to do a direct mail piece in the holiday season, bar none, is the first week of December. I always have what we call a drop date of December 1 through December 5. That's our drop date. You can go earlier, but I don't really recommend it because now you think you're dealing with Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving festivities, but December 1, people are in the mode that this is the holiday season. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. We want to meet with whatever our individuals that are part of that committee, that fundraising committee, and set up what are their tasks. What are they doing? Who's going to do the direct mail? Who's going to write the letter? Who's going to do the email solicitation? Who's going to start speaking to some of the major donors? If we are doing an event, do we have an event committee? Who is heading that? So we assign people. November, what we want to do is start looking at our local companies and start making some what we call organizational requests. Okay. Then, if we so choose, we will do our first mailer for our prospects and our donors. Don't worry about the appeal, if any, acquisition. And we'll also begin our online marketing and solicitation. When I say solicitation, just means an ask. Okay. And then December is so important. We will do what is called usually our second direct mail piece, second email or online, and real important, we'll do an end of year online marketing. End of year, when you hear that, all it means December 30th and 31st. And individuals will support your organization because it's a tax write-off. And what we do within the content of the end of the year, we will speak to that. Please feel free to make a tax-free donation to our organization, for an end of year donation. Here's our tax ID number. We appreciate your support. And usually what I do, that's done in the digital realm, do it as an email, and I'll just schedule it. I don't have to be there, because the last week of December, a lot of times I'm not in the office, but it'll be scheduled for December 30th and 31st. We'll talk about that when we get to the end of the year. So this is the holiday campaign. We're coming up on it. So our timing is perfect on this. So let's talk about the dashboard and calendar. A dashboard is just a tracking mechanism that we're going to use. And real important, and these are probably the three most important. We want to set a goal for our unique donors. How many unique donors do we have? How do we want to grow it? We'll set a goal for our transactions. How many transactions are we expecting or would like to expect to reach our goal? And then we'll set a goal for the amount in donations. So let's take a look at what that looks like. And what we have for your use after this presentation, we have an example of this that you can use. It's just an Excel spreadsheet, and you can subtract or add anything you want, but we will provide that as a handout after this presentation. So the real key one is all you want to do is just put in, you know how many donors you have. Put the donor amount in there. We're at this month, oops, I didn't want to do that. We're in this month, September. You say we have 56 donors at this point. And then we have 3 or 4 that we've identified as major donors. And then what we want to do is we want to put in how many that we expect or we want to have as a goal. And then we want to start filling in this information. You can fill in what you want. If it's information that you don't believe is pertinent to you, fine. If you don't want to track the website, we just track website visits because we want to track how many online gifts we're getting. But the key is down here is your total number of donations and then the total income. And then again, what we want to have is a goal. On the sheet that we are sending is the handout that we have. There's another column and it just says goal. That's all it is. It says goal. Okay. Okay. Next, we will set up is our fundraising calendar. And this is just the first 6 months. You will have this as a handout, but we will have at the bottom here is, and it is on the calendar that I've sent you, is that you will have the same thing. It'll tell you what to do in those months. And then you want to fill in anything that you want to do that's specific to your community foundation. So if you do an event that's specific to November or December, put it in there. And all we want to do is put it what it is. The real important part is to put what it is, what type it is it direct mail, is it online? And then just what we're forecasting, 1,000, 5,000, 6,000. But put that in there so you know, and then you have this for next year. And so you want to go through each of these items. And again, if you have any questions on this, keep your question, put it in the chat, and we'll talk about it when we get to slide number 14, which is our question slide. Okay, now let's talk about reaching out to local organizations. That's what we call. There's only 2 pots of money, period. 2 pots of money. And those 2 pots of money are individuals and organizations. Now, organizations for our purposes are companies, associations, and other organizations. But mainly it's your local company. And make sure you understand this is your local. So if you're in Matanuska, it'd be MTA is a local company, Matanuska Telephone. If you're up in Fairbanks, you got Golden Valley Federal Credit Union. So those are your local organizations. You want to reach out to your local organizations and use what is called access background documents, which we'll see in the next slide. Try to do 1 or 2. That's all you have to do. You just do the cover letter and there's a template in there. And you'll also have that as a handout with the template, and you send that as an email and asking, would you be willing to support, my local affiliate community foundation, at a certain level, okay? And then you would choose the level. What I usually do is I call the company and say, do you do corporate or community support of nonprofits and local foundations? And they'll say yes or no, but most of your bigger organizations will do that in companies. So I ask them that, and then I say, what range are you comfortable with in support? And they'll say, oh, we usually do support at 500. We'll do support at 1,000. We'll do support usually between 5 and 10,000. Okay, great. And then the only other question I need to know from them is, when is a good month to make a request? Most of 90% of them are open, which means you can make a request anytime. So we create the Word template, which you will have as a handout. You find your funders. I use Alaska Business Monthly. They have once a year, they have all the companies in the state of Alaska, and I know where they are. They have a phone number and who's the CEO, and I use that. And then you find the appropriate, that's what we talked about, you just ask. And then we track our results, and always we thank and acknowledge appropriately. So this is the information, and you have, again, this is the handout that you need to make a request for funding. That's what we call them requests, or RFFs, requests for funding. And really, the most important things you need that letter of determination. They're going to ask for this information when you do an online request. And many of the organizations will do an online request. And they're going to ask for So all I do is I give it to my clients and just, check it, put it in one folder online, in a folder in Dropbox or in your C drive, wherever you feel comfortable. And then you can access that and be able to efficiently and effectively put out your requests for fundings from organizations. Okay? This is an example of a template for a request for funding that's not done through an online portal. And so you can take a look at this at your convenience. There'll again be a handout, there'll be an example of this, and just copy and paste it to your heart's desire. Okay. And then, but the key thing, so this one, Alaska Kidney Patients Association is requesting funding of $250 for XYZ. Okay? These are questions that they need answered. That's why we have this in here. And the example that I will give you, the sample, will have this unfilled. So you just fill in this information, and this is your Word template. And all you do is copy and paste the address and name, and then you send it out as an email attachment. Okay? And that is organizations. That's your plan, your calendar. And at this point, do we have any questions, Carmen?
Thanks, Ken. We do not have any questions in the chat, but just want to open it up. I'm going to change my view to gallery. And if anyone would like to just ask a question, feel free to unmute and ask Ken.
And there are no bad questions whatsoever. And if you have a question that may help someone else who might have had some of the same thought. But if there are any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask the question. Okay. Huh?
And while we're pausing, just a note, Ken, so we've got most of the templates in the portal, advisory board portal, for use and access. And I think I do not have the nonprofit info RFF sheet, but we can get that up in templates.
Yeah, no problem. I hadn't thought about that.
Good.
One I didn't have in there, but I have it. No problem.
Perfect.
All right, excellent. So let's move on. Let's go to one of the most important, and it's definitely going to be important for you, which is going to be your direct mail. And so let's move on to direct mail. Okay. All right, direct mail best practices. The most important thing in direct mail, bar none, is your list. I cannot emphasize that enough. It is the list. You can have the greatest letter that will bring tears to your eyes. But if you have a bad list, it doesn't matter. There have been letters written or solicitations made that for whatever reason, they forgot to put the letter in the envelope, but they put the remit or reply envelope and have raised thousands of dollars. They're like, oh, it must be that time to support XYZ nonprofit. I wonder why they didn't put a letter in this. That's the content, but to have a good list is so important. So let's talk about the donor list. You have a list within each and every organization of supporters. And so what we want to do is go into that list and make sure it's cleaned up. And the way we clean that up very simply is we make sure there's addresses for everyone, and then we send it to our mail house, wherever you may be using, as your mail house, and ask them to run what is called a NCOA, National Change of Address. They'll run that NCOA, or you can do it yourself with a company called True NCOA. I believe I had that on a slide. And they'll do it for 20 bucks, no matter how large your list, well up to 10,000 people. Okay. That's your list of donors. So now you have a clean donor list. The next thing that you want to do, and probably for every organization, is we need to acquire what is called an acquisition list. And an acquisition list is very simply this. It is a list of individuals that have been pre-screened demographically to support your organization, that have a potential or propensity to support a community foundation or social services or nonprofits. because believe me, not everybody supports nonprofits. So we get those lists from, at least in Alaska that I've worked with, are 3 different organizations. You can go to Motsnick. There's another one I don't have on it. It's called Alaska List. You can go to PIP. You can go to me. I don't care who you work with. I'm not here to promote me. I'm just saying that's what you want to do. And what you want to do, and listen to this carefully, is you want to get a list. Well, I always say this: within 50 miles of your location, women, because women make 80 to 90% of all donations in the nonprofit field. I hate to say it, but it's true. I've run the numbers for 12 years. And what you're looking for is individuals, depending on who you go to. I'll tell you about that in a second. But you want women who, and then you want age, okay? And the age is 25 to unlimited. But if they're under 25, sometimes I won't even go under 40 because people really don't start donating. Depends on how large the list you want to go with. But many of you are in smaller areas. So if I was to do Anchorage 25, all women, within a certain demographic, it might be too large for some of my clients. So make sure you put those numbers down. Women 25 plus within 50 miles of your location. Okay. Now you can go to some list brokers and then ask for ones that have supported nonprofits, or ask for ones that have indicated that they support social services or things of that nature. But sometimes, just to keep it simple, what I do is I usually get a list 50 miles within of Anchorage, women 25 plus, and then I send them to a company that we're going to talk about here in a minute, called Wealth Engine. And then they will do, they will take that list, and then they will indicate to me everyone that has made a donation to a nonprofit in the state of Alaska over $500. And I have that list. It's 5,500 people who have made a single donation of $500 and more to a nonprofit in Alaska. Okay. So now we have our list. We have a prospect list and we have a donor list. The next thing we want to do is just make sure we have good envelopes. Just make sure you have your nonprofit status and mailer ID. I spoke with Carmen earlier, and we do have that. We have the nonprofit status. Use ACF, communicate with them, unless you have something, a relationship with a mail house, because many mail houses have their own nonprofit status ID that they can use as a 3-digit number. The other thing we want to do is do our remit envelope. If you're going to do a remit, the horizontal string is just our ask. What are we going to ask with? Start your ask with $50. Don't start with $25. We're in Alaska, and we start with 50. And I usually go 50, 100, 250, 500 other. Okay. You buy your envelopes in bulk. And what it means by spray, very simply, is that we spray, we have the mail house, they can spray the envelope for like a penny with whatever we want. And usually I'll put a tagline, help feed hungry children, right on the envelope. And that's a tagline. Okay. Then we're going to talk about the content. We're going to go into that. It's somewhat in depth. And we're going to do what is called a donor-centric letter. And very simply, it means we always ask ourselves, who is my donor? Your sweet spot is an older white female with money. No other way I can say it. That's your sweet spot. And one of the things I always say, and I've been taught, and I've been doing this for 10 years, 11 years, write like you're writing to your great aunt. Okay. And that's the spirit that we write in. These are individuals that are doing a donation, usually for an emotional reason, because it makes them feel good. That's why they're donating and supporting, and they believe in what you're doing in our community. And it makes them feel good to support you. They want to support you. And so we write to them like a great aunt. So we make the donor the hero. We're going to talk about that. Very important. Always, always 100% have pictures. In every appeal I make, an appeal is an ask. I have a picture because a picture involves people emotionally. And this is about emotion. This is not quote unquote a rational decision. It's about emotion. It's about the things that we do within our community to make our community better, whether we're environmental, arts and culture, community foundation, we make our community stronger, more vibrant, and better. And it's an emotional appeal. Always have a match if you can. And a match very simply says XYZ organization or major donor will support all donations up to XYZ amount. So your donation goes twice as far today. And then the PS, very, very important. When people read letters, we've studied this for 60, 70 years. The first thing they go to is the PS, believe it or not. They can do these things where they can see where the eyeballs go. When they read a letter, it goes to the PS. So the PS is very, very important, that your postscript is very important. And it almost always, when I do direct mail, it talks to, if you would like to make a secure matched online donation, please visit us at xyz.org. Okay. So that's real important. And kept it simple. It's only 4 or 5 things, but let's look at what we do when we write a letter. And let's look at the content. With some more best practices, then we'll content. We don't really need to worry about the postal regulations. We're not going to get into that too deep. We talked about the mailer ID and the nonprofit status. The reason we want to do that is because if you were to do a direct mail piece first class, it's $49.50, 51 cents. If you do a bulk mail, it's 25 cents. But if you do bulk nonprofit, it's 11 or 12 cents per envelope. That's why we want to do the nonprofit rate and have the mailer ID. Okay. Here's what we talked about. Always send your list, whether it's a prospect list or a donor list, to your mail house, or run it, what we call it, run it through True NCOA, National Change of Address. And what it'll do, it'll tell you everybody who's moved away. And once they move away, you've lost them. I just hate to tell you that, unless they're a major donor, but you've lost them. Because what they'll do is support a local nonprofit within their new community in Houston or Kansas or wherever they've moved to. Okay? The good thing about True NCOA, which I love, is that if you, let's say you have 5,000 people in your donor database, I just threw a number out. You may not have anywhere near that much. But if you did, if you do True NCOA, and it's literally $20, they will give you all updates for 18 months. And they'll just send you once a month. They tell you this person's moved away, this person's moved to another address within your city, whatever. But they'll do that for 18 months. It's a wonderful organization. And just found them about 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, let's talk about the content, how to tell our story that motivates donors to give. I'm using these slides with permission of Jeff Brooks, who's a very good friend of mine in Seattle, one of the fundraising gurus, wonderful, wonderful fundraiser. And he's given me permission to use this slide. That's why they're so colorful. Okay, the real story is a donor story. Okay, it's not the organization's story. It's not the beneficiary's story. It's the donor. And this is, it was so hard for me to understand this in the beginning. When I did my first direct mail piece, I said Beans Cafe has served 300,000 meals in 2011, and you know how great we are, and da 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 da. And it wasn't about Beans Cafe. We're just a vehicle to provide the services, but it's about your support. You, Mr. and Mrs. Donor, because of you, and you'll hear this word "you" a lot. Okay, it's about the donor. Okay, you make clear that they are the hero of the story. Okay, it's not the beneficiary and it's not the organization. Okay, so there's 3 ways to tell a story. One's right, one's wrong, and one's half right. Okay, Organization as hero. That's the way I started. That's what many organizations do. And it's incorrect. I mean, they've studied it. We do A/B testing all the time. And we test, we have a control, and we do the change. And it's called A/B testing. They've done this again for 50, 60 years. So we have organization as hero. Because of how great an organization we are, we've done this. So please support us, okay? It's heavy on facts and numbers. It's light on you, a lot of jargon because we're talking about the organization. We're going to use acronyms, da, 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 and it has these boring bullets. Literally, this was my first letter when I was at Beans Cave. I literally had bullets. I didn't know. I taught, nobody, don't do it. Don't do it, okay? Let's work at the next one. This one can work, but it's not as effective as the donor as hero. This is the beneficiary as hero. And that's when we tell a story about someone we've affected, we've helped, we've assisted. Tends to be overly written because we're telling this long story about where this person was, and because of your help, we've done it. We don't even say because of your help, because of our help as a great organization, we've been able to do this. It's light on you again, you know, see about you, and it's questionable relevance to the donor, okay? Because it's like, okay, I'm glad that you did this. Maybe I'll support it, but that's halfway there, okay? Proceed with caution, as we would say. Then we have the letter we want to write. And start thinking about this as a community foundation. It's because of the support of you, Mr. and Mrs. Donor, or Mrs. Donor, or person that we're talking to. We've been able to, but it's only because of you. And because of you, I mean, I can write you. I tried to use the word you 4 to 5 times in every letter I write. Everyone. It's colloquial. We're talking to our great aunt. Hey, Aunt, you know, Aunt Beth, you know, because of you, you know, I've been able to go to college because of your support and helping me, you know, pay for my tuition. I can't tell you how important your support has been. Da da da. It reveals why I'm reading. It has a lot of you. And the most important thing, and I cannot emphasize this enough, you have to have, we call it a CTA, which is just a term we use, call to action. You have to ask for money. I can't tell you how many letters I've seen that you don't ask. People have these beautiful letters, and I'm like, where's the ask? And so we need to, you know, with your support today, you know, with a donation of $5,000 or $500, or with a donation today, we always have this thing we call urgency within the letter. We want to have urgency. If you could support us today because of donations or donors like you, we've been able to do. So I use the word donors. I've used the word supporters. But the key one is I want to use the word you. We want to write you, okay? 5 hints for a donor-focused fundraising stories. Say you a lot. I cannot emphasize that. When I made these slides, I made sure that was in red. I'm writing to you because we need your support today. I'm writing to you today because in 2022, we have this incredible, and we're going to hear about this when we work with major donors. Always, if you can, speak to the future. Let me say that again. Always speak to the future. And the reason why we speak to the future is because they can't support the past. I'm glad you did 300,000 meals last year. I can't do anything with that. It's already happened. So we always talk to the future. You can help us today. The difference you can make will amaze you. Your donation will go to work immediately supporting our community in Fairbanks, in Talkeetna, in Sitka, in Juneau. It's you. People hear the you and they think you're talking to me. Okay, yeah, I can make a difference. Okay, so we say you a lot. Okay, put the donor in the story. I wish you could see it. Some of the things that we have done and are going to do in the near future. You'd understand right away. I'm so thankful to have friends like you and supporters like you that have supported us. And you can look, and sometimes, especially if you're writing to major donors, we talk about their history. because of the last 5 years of your significant, these are the words I use with major donors, significant and considerable, because of your considerable support of our mission to support Juneau and the nonprofits in the community of Juneau. We're talking about Juneau Community Foundation, you know, Amy and the group down there, or Sitka, or Talkeetna, or wherever you're from, Ketchikan. Talk about those. And you talk about their history and talk about, we couldn't do it without your help. And this year, we need your help again, okay? Or we need your support. I like the word support, okay? Right? Like your Aunt Ruth, you know, not like the incredible Hemingway that you are. You know, I looked at this slide, and actually Hemingway is pretty good, because Hemingway has real short sentences, and we want short. We don't want Faulkner. Anybody who's read John Barth or William Faulkner, don't write like John Barth or William Faulkner, okay? But keep them short, concise, to the point, like you're writing to your Aunt Ruth, okay? Put your heart on your sleeve. This is emotional. This is emotional. I've never seen something so inspiring when those kids walked across the stage when we supported, you know, the Juneau Arts, you know, Festival, you know, and we gave those scholarships to XYZ, or when we set up this endowment, you know, that supported Native teenage girls in STEM education. You know, the look on their face. And we talk about that. And we only did it because of support from donors like you. Okay? I thank God for people like you. I wouldn't use God for that. That's one of Jeff's slides, but but I understand what he was saying and doing in that. And sometimes when we work with some of the religious nonprofits, we will do things like that. Okay? Avoid statistics. I can't say this enough. When you start running facts and numbers, you lost it. This is not a federal grant. This is not a HUD grant, okay? This is a letter letting the donor know how important their support of our mission is, and how thankful we are, and how we really couldn't do it without them, because we really couldn't, okay? All right, so that is an example of writing a letter. That's your content, and that's also your delivery. Do we have any questions? And please feel free to ask any questions.
Hi, Ken. I don't see anything in the chat, but again, once again, if folks want to chime in,
Yes.
please feel free to unmute.
I usually get some questions at this point, so I'm open.
This is Ron in Fairbanks.
Yay, how you doing, Ron? Okay.
You were mentioning that there were a number of organizations that help you to get your lists together.
Mhm.
Is that true for all communities? We have a lot of rural places, so I would imagine those kinds of services are available in Anchorage, maybe in Fairbanks and Juneau, but what about smaller places?
Well, okay, so are you talking about acquiring a list of individuals that you may be able to make an ask of?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So the lists are literally statewide. Okay. And so what you would do is you would contact a MOTSNC, you would contact a PIP, you would contact Alaska Data and say, hey, I want a list of Ketchikan, and I want all households, in Ketchikan, or I want all women in Ketchikan 25 plus. The more things that you ask for, what I mean by that, the more defined your list is, the more expensive it is per name that they give you or address that they give you. But they have it for all over the state. You can say, I just want everything, you know, above, you know, Fairbanks. You know, we're talking about the Arctic Slope Borough, okay? And they can provide that. And then remember, what they'll do is give you a list. And then what you want to do, if you so choose, you can mail to just that group, or you can then do what we call wealth screening. And then those will tell you who has wealth in that area. And then there's the third one is who has donated at the major donor level, okay?
Great. And how do you determine what the cost is going to be for those lists?
You ask them for a quote. I'll be honest with you. So I do this for a living. So when I get my lists are 25,000 to 30,000. Because I want to do things with it. And it'll cost me a couple grand. And that's the cost of my business. So what I did is I took the 25,000 to 30,000 people, 25 and above. I did both men and women. But I asked them for individuals of a certain wealth. They gave me back the list. I had the list. Then I sent them to the wealth screener, who then gave me back a list of 5,000 that had given at least $500. 5,500 people who have given at least $500 single gift to a nonprofit. I even know what type of nonprofit they give to, and I have those lists. And then I give those to my clients, who want those. But that's Anchorage. I'm gonna make sure I let you know that's Anchorage, because 90% of my business is not. But you can get the list for the rest of the state. Rest assured.
Well, maybe we'll go poach on Anchorage.
You could. I'm serious. Major donors have capacity, which means they have wealth. And so what you're looking for is what sector, because it's arts and culture, it's education, it's higher ed, it's arts and culture, education, medical, and social services. And for community foundations, your sweet spot would be social services, which is literally the largest also. And I know so when I get the list, I know how much they donated. And I'm not gonna mention the person's name, but there was a person that gave 40 million to the university. I know who it is. So, but tells you exactly, because that's somewhat public information, and they do this what they call they do data mining, and they get these lists and get these names and these individuals. So
I'm
if
curious.
you want some more on that, Ron, please feel free to talk to me offline, and I'll help you out. No problem. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything. I'll just answer any questions you may have. If you want to go more in detail, okay? Anyone else?
Yes, this is Krista in Ketchikan.
Okay.
I'm curious because I just listened to another ACF recorded stream of conversations about fundraising and legacy giving and so forth. And is your list devoid of anonymous gifts, or do you know?
Of course it is. Yeah. And I don't mean to say it like that. Yeah, I don't know who anonymous people are. And there are a lot of anonymous gifts, but we don't know who those are. And the data mining companies don't know who that is either.
Okay, so
and we don't have the anonymous. No.
So it doesn't come through as a field, an anonymous.
No, not at all.
Just curious.
They all have a name and an address that is good, and will tell you, who they've donated to, what type of nonprofit that they've donated to. One of those 4 that I mentioned, and some of them have donated major gifts to all of them, because they give to major, they give to a lot of nonprofits. So let me just run these numbers, and we're going to move on to the next section. But this is the numbers. Understand this, that the average donor donates to 6 to 8 nonprofits a year. I donate to 12, 15. I just, by the nature, I'm in that field. But the average donor donates to 6 to 8. Okay. But they only leave their money to 1 or 2. And that person who was doing the legacy may have spoke to that. But one of the key things that we want to do, by thanking them on time and acknowledging them, and creating what we call stewardship of that donor, especially the major donor and the regular donor. And a regular donor is the person that donates every month. You have a much higher propensity to have them become a legacy donor and gift. And we would love that. As a community foundation, we love the legacy. People that set up endowments and or set up something in their will or planned gift to set up something at a community foundation. Okay? Awesome. Let's move on.
Thank you. Ken, we do have some comments and questions.
Okay, sure.
So we have a question from one person. Did you say use supporter instead of donor when asking for donations?
No, I use both. I use it because what I want to do is I don't want to use the same word every time. So that's why I'll say significant gift. Thank you for your considerable gift. Thank you. I usually don't say thank you for your major gift because they don't really know what that means. That's a term we use internally, but I'll use donor, supporter, friend, but I want the letter to mix that because I'm just talking like I'm talking to you in the letter. It's colloquial. So hopefully that answers that question. So yeah, it can be any of those.
Thanks. And Sue Paulson of Petersburg also put in a question here. Any thoughts on reaching major donors who are men? You've talked to us about older women, but in a little fishing town, there are a lot of, as she says, old guys with money that presumably love their community, specifically praise them for some known contribution to the betterment of our town, and then ask for support for the CF.
Right. Yeah, great question. Great question. I appreciate that. I was working with, I don't know if he's on the call or not, but Homer Community Foundation. And there are a lot of individuals, it's something about boats and money. So there's a lot of, whenever there's boats, there's money. But, reaching out to men, there's no difference. It's just that there aren't as many men for most areas per capita in relationship to women donors. Just isn't. But when we're reaching out to men, we still speak to them the same way. They're still a supporter, a friend, a donor, and we speak to them literally the same. So when I've done a lot of major gift work. And when I sit down with major donors, most of the time it's couples. It's couples. But what I have found out is usually it's the woman making the decision. The guy just sits there and nods his head, okay, yeah, all right. But if you have, men, you still reach out to them the same way. The letter is the same. There's no difference in the letter. It's just, especially if you're doing prospecting, it's just difficult. Again, it depends on how much money you have in capacity. If I could, I would send a direct mail piece to every single person in Anchorage. I can't afford it. Okay. If I'm prospecting for new donors, but if I'm trying to get the best bang for my dollar, I'm going to look at that older female cohort because there's a lot of wealth there and they're really supportive of nonprofits and especially anything to do with social services. So I hope that helped. Okay.
Great. And then just a couple of, Aaron Dwyer Palmer is loving this very specific information. And Gail, you have a fan in Gail as well from Cordova.
Yeah. Well,
carry on.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move on. We only have 18 more and time's going well. So we're good. So digital and online fundraising. It's the same as doing direct mail that we set up our campaign, we set up our goals. Great. We don't need to go into that. We know what we're doing in a campaign. Why are we going online? Why are we going online? Usually I'm in person, I'll ask that as a question and then people will give me responses back, but I'll answer that for you. The reason is every year it's growing. It is growing as a percentage of all donations. It used to be literally 99% direct mail and in-person asks. Now, each year it's growing. I have 2019, I just saw in June, we get our numbers from Giving USA organization. We get our numbers for the year before. And, 14% of total fundraising was online for small organizations. The total is 8.7. That's up to, I think, 9.9, 10%. That's a lot when you're talking about billions of dollars. And so it's growing. And also the younger cohort is becoming very comfortable in that. So we need to touch the younger cohorts and younger potential and primary donors that we have now. So again, that's why. But one of the key things when we're doing online is that we got to know when and how. The when is so important. 30% of all annual giving for online is going to happen in December, in 1 month, for two reasons: holiday, end of year. Remember we talked about the end of year is a mail and sometimes a social media, but predominantly an email function. And then also we will have the online giving coming through because we're doing an online campaign in December. Another thing, 10% of all, 10% in the last 3 days. You can almost say the last two, but let's just say the last three, end of year. People are doing it for tax reasons many times. And another reason is because they've gotten a solicitation from you. Okay. So, and then December 31st, they even go into more. But the key thing, you can look, boom, it just goes up tremendously. Okay. So when, and then what do we want to do? We're just going to do a real quick going through, and I want you to look at this and then work with ACF, especially on your website and also anything that you want to do in that email. If you need any assistance in there, look toward, that great support that you get from the Alaska Community Foundation. But one of the key things that we want to do is audit our website. Let's talk about that real lightly. Check all links. This is super easy to do. Take you 20 minutes. And then create a best practices landing page. Not worried about the donation page because you're working with ACF on that, but work on the landing page. And I'll tell you what that is in a second. And then on an email, again, we're talking about list again, subject line and links and buttons that work on mobile. Is it mobile ready? Super important. Okay, so let's look at this. This is the Beans Cafe. I used to bring in $250,000 a year just from online. And when I started 3 years before, we were bringing in $9,000 a year. And in 3 years, I brought it up to $250,000 a year. And a big component of that was, again, the website. And I spent a bunch of time designing it. But let me just give you the real quick one. Number one, make sure you have somewhere on your website, to the best of your ability, address. Because people want to send you a check. But they can't find your address. It makes it real difficult. So I like it in the header, but you can also have it in what we call the footer. If you're doing social media, have your social media buttons, no problem. Name of the organization, the Community Foundation. I like to have a tagline. Again, something that involves people emotionally. Let's get them into the emotional state from the beginning. Feeding the hungry and sheltering those in need since 1979. It's a tagline. Of course, your links, not go right there. Picture, please, the power of pictures. This is what they call a carousel, and it would go through a bunch of different pictures. But you see, that picture just tells 1,000 stories right there. Someone's receiving nourishment, through the largest of donors like you, okay? And then, super important, a donate button, if possible, in the header, okay? And that's the best color. We've done a lot of research on this, is this burnt orange is the best color. And the reason is red works really well for a lot of people, but it also doesn't work well for a lot of people. And so it's a really good one. And the only other thing I'll say about websites for this portion of it, please don't have a reverse print website. And a reverse print website is a black background with white letters. It is very difficult to read, especially as you get older. The other thing is, if possible, this is shrunk, but I have all my type is 14 point. Again, just some video to engage people. Email sign up. We're always trying to grow our email list. So it's so important to have a newsletter. Let's have a newsletter. Sign up for our newsletter for the Juneau Community Foundation. Sign up for the newsletter for the Catch a Can. If you want more information, from us, sign up for our newsletter, and that goes into your email system. And then, real important, to the best of your ability, if you can, these are called bona fides. And what they are is that they say that you're legitimate as an organization. And you guys are, as your community foundation. But if you have these, let's use them. Okay? So I got BBB, United Way, Charity Navigator, and our most famous, the Guide Star. Okay? And then other information, always have your EIN somewhere, which is your tax ID number. And then again, I have that get in touch. If you want to mail something to me, get in touch. Okay. Okay. So that's your website. Real simple. Okay. I kept it real simple. This is something I do that has been very successful for me at Beans Cafe and my organization. What I did is during the holiday seasons, I had every email signature of volunteers and staff and individuals connected with Beans Cafe. They had please support Beans Cafe with an online donation this holiday season. And then I had this is a clickable link right here. This is a pick, click, give one, but it's a clickable link. And I would just say donate or support. And that was in everyone's signature. And we made a lot of money off of that. So have the email signature for all staff, volunteers, or supporters that are willing to do that. Okay. We call them e-blast, even though I've been told I need to change that name. It's too violent, but it's an email solicitation. And I just want to go through what's important in this. Number one, photograph, photograph, photograph. We said we always have a picture because a picture tells a story, okay? And it involves people emotionally. We always said if you can do kids or puppies, you've done it. And I say I can make a kids and puppies for any nonprofit in the state of Alaska. Just give me enough time. But we want kids and puppies. And then this is a real key one. Let me say this and let me say it again. Is it thumbable? Is it thumbable? And what I mean is you create an email in whatever platform you use, and then you send it to yourself and you look at it on a cell phone. And what you don't want is this. And this is fine on this because I have the clickable button down here and I can thumb it, donate. I hit the thumb. But what I've seen is they have like 3 clickable links, one line under each. And you have to go like this. Yeah, let me get it. You're trying to pinpoint it. So is it thumbable? And we always check 2 things. We check our emails and we check our website on a cell phone, okay? Because 50–60% of all emails are opened up on a cell phone today. About 60%. It goes up every year. So is it clickable? And we made it real simple. This is a pick, click, give one, 2 pictures. We made our ask, okay? And we have a button, okay? And this is a tagline, again, as we spoke about, okay? Let's talk about some marketing real quick. PSAs, I'm a big believer in PSAs. So what you want to do is contact your local radio station. And what I do is I can do the PSAs now over the phone. I have a radio station down here, Alpha Media in Anchorage, Alaska. I just call them up and say, I'd like to do a PSA. I talked to Joe and he said, okay, read it off. I'll put music to the background. I'll produce it as an MP4 or MP3. And then I will send it to you. And then we send it out to all the other radio stations. And if anybody needs that list, again, at no cost, I have a list of 81 radio stations all over the state. This is all over the state, not just Anchorage. 80, because there's not 81 radio stations in Anchorage. And you just send it to them and they may or may not run it. I mean, it depends on their capacity. I always say don't run PSAs during the election season because you're not going to get it because they got too much paid election advertisement. But many times as an organization, as a radio station or TV station, they have to, for their license, do things, run PSAs, okay? So very simple is we just want to talk about whatever we want to do in our PSA, our public service announcement. Please support us this holiday season, XYZ. And then what you can do is if you don't want to, and they're 30 seconds, I don't usually do a 15, almost always a 30, but this is one of the key things is to make sure you have a written version of the PSA. So you will send to the radio station the MP3 and you will send a written version because some of the DJs like to read them. They don't put them into their queue. It's called a queue. They don't put them in the queue. They just read the PSA. And same difference to me, as long as it gets played. TV, if you can do a 30-second video, they're very effective. we used to be, we used to do KTUU news every Thanksgiving for Beans Cafe. And as soon as they ran it during the 6 o'clock news, our donations would shoot up online because it was on the 6 o'clock news that they did a little newscast about Beans Cafe feeding the homeless in Anchorage. Okay. Oops. And then the TV ads are really the same as the PSA and the TV and the radio PSA, except you're paying for placement. And many times it's worth your while to do that. Especially if you see you're not getting any traction in your local radio station, talk to them. And sometimes they'll do, an in-kind, to support you, Okay, here's a radio PSA that I did. And all you did is that individual would read this as a public service announcement. Alaska Boxing Academy, we're doing XYZ, to support us. Please visit our website at www.alaskaboxing.org. Okay. TV PSA is another one that we did. We created a 30-second. We used an iPhone and created a 30-second video of at-risk youth at the Alaska Boxing Academy being helped. And then we were able to run that on TV stations in Anchorage years ago. Worked really well. Okay. Let's talk about events. Let's talk about the problems with events. There's a lot of time, there's a poor return on investment. There's a lot of investment in time and money to get the gifts, the auction items, setting up the venue. And of course, as a lot of the in-person has been put on hiatus. Many times there's too many local events. In Anchorage, September, October in Anchorage was brutal. There was so many events, and people would call me from other nonprofits. Ken, are you doing anything this weekend? This Friday, October 14th? I'm like, yeah, I got the empty bowl of the poor. Oh man, we were going to do. Let me find another one. And we would call around and see, so we don't bump heads, because we only have so many people, especially major donors to come and purchase these auction items. And again, they can be costly in time and in money. Now, the positives and what I love about events is fundraisers. I want names. That's what I want. I want names to put into my direct mail list. That's what I really want. Get names, get addresses. If you do an event for any reason, free or cost, please have somewhere where they can sign up as they come into the venue. If it's if it's in person, but you can get their name. And then if you can, get in their address and email. What I don't do is I never ask for phone numbers, because a lot of people don't want to give out their phone numbers, but they usually don't have a problem with getting addresses and getting their emails, especially if they're coming into your event, because they have an affinity for either the event or for the organization. It involves your volunteers and helps your volunteers feel a part of the organization. It involves your board. And it's also good promotion and branding of the nonprofit. Remember why people don't trust you? Because they don't know you and they have no history of engagement with you. And they can be profitable, especially if they're what we call a legacy event. And that's the event that we've been doing. Maybe we've been doing the Empty Bowl for 30 years and they'll make 150,000, or used to. We used to do that. Okay. Getting close on time. Okay. Do we have any questions before we come into the last section, which won't take too long, but any questions on online and or promotion? Take one or two.
Nothing in the chat, but it's open for questions, guys. So, and ladies.
Yeah, please feel free. Anybody want to come off mute and ask one or two questions? Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is major donors. I love them. This is your bread and butter, folks. It's not events. It's not organizations. It's not even prospect direct mail. It's major donors. Major donors are going to be your legacy donors, and they're going to give you the majority of your support. How you identify a major donor is up to each organization. So I'll never forget this. A few years back, I read somewhere to be a major donor, no, to get on the board of the New York Philharmonic or the New York Ballet, you have to make a single gift of at least $25 million to be even thought to be a potential board member. You have to give 25 million. And I was like, wow, that's a major donor. Okay. In Alaska, usually we use 500 and above single gift, but I've also used 500 and above aggregate in a year. But we just need to separate them and know who our major donors are, because at some point we need to touch them in person, each and every major donor. I can't emphasize this enough. We need to thank them in person. It can be over phone, but predominantly it could be over Zoom, but predominantly, if possible, in person. The other group we need to identify are your regular donors. Each and every probably organization or community foundation that I'm speaking to has a group of people that have been supporting monthly, at least many of the organizations. And they'll give $100 and put it into their endowment or put it into their fund, on a regular basis, quarterly, half yearly, yearly. That's what we call a regular donor. If a regular donor has a higher propensity to become a legacy gift than a major donor, hands down. We call it the woman who has been donating $50 every month or $20 a month for 15 years and then leaves you $1 million. You didn't even know. You had no clue. But that's very common. Okay. Let's talk about the Pareto. Pareto principle very simply says that 20% of your donor database provides 80% of your income. And I went to a presentation 11 years ago and was blown away. It was called Pareto Square. And he said, look at your donor database and your top 4% of your donors give 60% of your dollars. And I'm like, no way, no way. I had 8,000 donors. And I ran the numbers and it was 65, 66%. Now, how do we do the wealth screening? We take our donor database and we go to donorsearch.net or wealthengine.com. Look them up, just Google them. And then we send them the list. First, we get a quote. I have 5,000 people. I have 2,000 people. You send them the list, and then they'll send you back a spreadsheet that tells you what their wealth is in property and dollars. I mean, it's incredible. The amount of information that's out there, believe me, it's incredible. So anyway, we do a wealth screening because what you'll find out, you have people that have been donating $50 or $100 or $1,000 into their endowment that are millionaires. They just haven't been approached at the major donor level. Okay, once we've identified our major donors, we're going to do two things. One, we're going to talk to our major donors who have supported us, and then we're going to talk to the ones that have not supported us, but we've identified them as major donors. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do what's called the first meeting is called the thank you meeting, and then we're going to go into what we call the ask meeting. Okay, first meeting, real simple. Keep it simple. Can't emphasize this enough. First meeting, we call them, or we see them at an event, we see them at the grocery store, and say, hey, Jane, do you mind if we sit down? I want to tell you about some of the things that we're doing at the Juneau Community Foundation. I'd love to share and sit down and talk to you about that. Sure, they're a major donor, no problem. And then at that meeting, your advisory board member will go and sit down with that individual where they want to meet. It's always the donor where they want. They want to meet in the home. Do they want to meet in a coffee shop? Do they want to meet over lunch? Whatever it may be. Do they want to meet in the office? Doesn't matter. It's always the donor intent. And this is the key, folks. All we're going to do is thank them. That's it. The first meeting, we don't ask for money. We just thank them. Thank you for your significant support over the years. Looking over the records for the last 5 years, you've supported us to the level, if I'm correct, of over $200,000 into your endowment fund. And we're so appreciative of that. And on behalf of the Juneau Community Foundation, the staff and the volunteers and the advisory board members, we just wanted to thank you. And also, I wanted to tell you a little bit of some of the things that we're going to be doing in the next couple of years. This is super important, folks. What we want to do is this. We have one question that we want to ask them, and that's why. Why do you support us? Why do you support us? That's it. You got to say it with that much emphatic. But you said, why do you support Juneau Community Foundation? Why do you support the Ketchikan Community Foundation? And they'll tell you, because now they get to talk about them and why they're passionate at the major donor level to support, and why they set that endowment up, why they set that community fund up. I mean, the community, but that endowment or whatever they've set up. And man, I can tell you the look they'll get in the eye. And then we talk about the future plan. Remember, people fund the future. They fund the future, okay? No ask for support, but 50, 60, 70% of the time, they're like, how can I help? What can I do more to help out more kids with this, this endowment fund I've set up for, young women doing STEM education? 50, 60, 70%. And then if back in the day, we used to ask for, do you want any more information or would you like a tour? That's the first meeting. It's all it is a thank you. And I would say easily 60, 70% of the time, people would ask me, would say, hey, how can I support? What can I do now? And I never asked for an ask. I never asked for any money. The second one, the ask meeting, it starts off the same way. We want to thank them for meeting us. And we'd like to thank you for your considerable and significant support of our mission, okay? We remember what their why was. If I remember correctly, because we have our notes that we've looked at, and if I remember correctly, the reason that you support is because you really enjoy feeding hungry children in Anchorage when I was doing the children's lunchbox. And then they'll say, yeah, really, it's important because my grandchildren, the daughter had some difficulties, but I really want to support feeding hungry children in Anchorage. And then we turn and we say, in 2022 or, in the rest of this year, whatever, but it's always to the future, this is some of the things we have planned. And we really would like your support in that at the level of, if you could support us at a level of $5,000. Would that be something you'd be open to? And this is the hard part for most people. It's hard for them to be quiet. They keep wanting to talk. I've been on a lot of these meetings. And because now the person has to think. We've talked about their why. We've talked about the future. We thanked them for their significant support over the years. And now they just need to make that, thought. There's only 3 answers they're going to give you. Yes, no, and usually no is not now. And then they'll even say not now. I can't do it right now, but I'm doing some things with my stocks in March. Can you circle back around in March and let's talk then? Or I have some equities that I'm working with, or I would like to do something towards the end of the year for tax purposes, because I'm talking about a significant fund. Awesome. And then again, we always want to thank them for taking the time to meet with us. And I always follow with something written, a letter or a card, okay? No matter what the answer is. Man, that they even took the time and they have supported us. Now, if they're a new person, we don't do a thank you other than thanking for the time. We're going to make this ask. And we're going to say, the key thing is that we would want to talk about why would you be interested, or why would you be interested in your community or supporting your community? Because they have the propensity. We've already found they have the capacity financially to be able to do this. And many times in a lot of my presentations, we would just do some role playing. I'm telling you, when you do some thank you meetings, I've never, ever in 12 years had a bad thank you meeting, ever. All I'm doing is thanking you. And then what I'm really doing is I'm also preparing them for when I come back on the second time for the ask meeting, okay? We're almost done here. Okay, so I want to ask, first of all, are there any other questions or comments, concerns on working with major donors?
Nothing in the chat.
Awesome. Now our timing is going good. Okay, so our next suggested steps. Establish or meet with your fundraising committee or your advisory committee, the individuals that will be working over these next 3.5 months. And it could continue past, but I'm really concerned about that last 6 weeks of the year, okay? And I'm really concerned about you making that goal of that match with Rasmus, okay? Share this presentation. You will have this presentation. You will have these handouts within the next day. Okay, share it internally, share it with your team or the individuals. Do the well screening. Take your list, well screen, and then prepare your direct mail in your holiday campaign, because that's what we're coming up on, folks. Now you can start the thank you meetings and the ask meetings now. But for the direct mail, predominantly, it's worth your while to wait for those last 6 weeks. And this is another thing, have fun. I do this way, I put it, I got to smile at it. Have fun and enjoy the journey and the process. Because this is one of the most important things I can tell you. What I do is I facilitate an individual feeling good about supporting something they believe in. It's my obligation to help them feel good. Because when they make that donation, when they do that support, they feel good. And I have the opportunity and I have the honor of sitting down and helping them to feel good about supporting. Okay? I'm not begging any way, shape, or form. I'm allowing you to feel good about supporting something you believe in our community. And if you have any question, please contact me. Obviously, you work with ACF, and they have a great staff there. I've known Mariko for years. I had an opportunity to meet with, I've known Sharon for a long time. I got a chance to meet with Carmen and Julianne. They're great people. And then if they want to filter questions back to me, feel free. If you want to talk to me offline for some reason, no problem, no cost. Contact me, especially if it's a really technical, specific question, but try to filter most everything through ACF. And again, enjoy this process. And it's fun. It's fun. And then contact information for me is here. And then these are a few blogs. Remember I talked about Jeff Brooks. He's the one that had the slides on the content. Roger Craver is awesome out of England. This is the one that talked about the Pareto principle. He's got a great blog. Anything to do in the digital realm online, John Loomer is fantastic. And Tom Ahern is our guru. And especially on communications and emails and e-newsletters. He's forgotten more than I know. Okay, let me just put it that way. And in the end, and I believe is so important, I want to thank you again. Thank you for bringing me in. I'm super excited. You can see I get excited, but I'm just super excited for what you guys do in your communities. Many are from small communities, they're tight-knit, and people want to support you. They just have to be asked at the right time, in the right method, with the right message. So any other questions, comments towards this end? Because we're done.
Ken, thank you. Thanks for your passion. Definitely comes through the screen. So I hope that energy is getting passed around. I know I'm getting it. I just put a quick note. Next event is What Will Your Legacy Be? Wills and Estate Planning in Alaska on September 30th from 4 to 5:30 p.m. via Zoom. You should be receiving invitations to that. Green envelope invitations. And then please take a 2-minute ACF fundraising evaluation on this presentation. I will also send you all an email tomorrow with that link if you don't care to do it right now, and the portal information. And I will include Ken in that email as a copy so that you are all in contact with each other, and we are all in contact. So thank you so much. If there are no other questions, we will see you all next time. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, guys.